Welcome to the Explainer. So, today we're exploring this deeply fascinating paradox. Think about the exact moment you wake up. Your smartphone is immediately buzzing, right? You're scrolling through social media on your packed commute, just staring at everyone else's highlight reels. You finally get to work, and that mountain of tasks, it literally never seems to shrink. Then you're eating lunch, just staring at a screen, probably not even tasting your food. We live in this era of absolutely unprecedented convenience and abundance, yet somehow so many of us feel completely exhausted and, paradoxically, kind of empty. Well, today we're going to dive into how our 2,000-year-old philosophy, Zen, can actually cure our modern burnout by teaching us the ultimate art of subtraction. We've got a fantastic roadmap for today. We're going to start by looking at this burden of adding, take a quick trip through the history of Zen, and then explore 3 modern Zen solutions. After that, we'll check out the aesthetics of subtraction, how Zen fits into our modern world, and wrap up with how you can find Zen every single day. Let's get into it. Section 1. The burden of adding. Why more leaves us empty. You know, we constantly tell ourselves that if we just had a little more efficiency, a little more time, or maybe a little more status, we'd finally feel at peace. But what this brilliantly illustrates is the core problem. We don't suffer because we lack something. We suffer because we're just adding way too much. We're constantly piling on more information, more comparisons, more efficiency hacks, and these endless tasks. But Zen steps in and says, whoa, stop adding. It teaches us this profound power of subtracting, of actually letting go of all those heavy burdens so we can just return to the present moment, completely emptying the mind. Moving on to Section 2, a brief history of Zen, a 2,000-year journey. So where did this incredibly powerful idea of subtraction actually come from? I mean, it didn't just happen overnight. As you can see, this wisdom actually evolved over 2,000 years. It all kicked off in India way back between the 5th and 6th centuries as a meditation practice called dhyana in Sanskrit. Then a monk named Bodhidharma brought it over to China, where the name shifted to Chan. And here's the really fascinating part. In China, this meditation blended perfectly with local Taoist philosophies, specifically this idea of emptying the mind and forgetting the ego. A major player here was Huineng in the 6th century. Finally, fast forward to the 13th century. A Japanese monk named Dogen traveled to China, soaked up this deeply refined philosophy, and brought it back to Japan as Zen, where it became hyper-focused on the pure, simple act of just sitting. All right, Section 3, 3 modern Zen solutions, curing modern anxieties. Now, let's get into the meat of our explainer. How does this ancient wisdom actually solve the massive, overwhelming anxieties we're dealing with today? Well, before we tackle our obsession with time and our wandering minds, we have to ask ourselves a really crucial question. Why do our days just slip through our fingers like sand, leaving us physically present but mentally miles and miles away? Get this. Modern neuroscience and ancient Zen actually meet perfectly right here. Neuroscience points to something called the default mode network. Basically, when we aren't laser-focused on a specific task, our brain just defaults to this background circuit. And while sure, it can be great for creativity, it way too often traps us in this endless loop of ruminating on past regrets or just stressing out about future anxieties. And massive studies back this up. When our minds are wandering like this, our happiness literally plummets. We aren't stressed because we don't have enough time. We're stressed because our minds are literally never in the present. But 800 years ago, that Japanese monk, Dogen we mentioned, he completely solved this with a concept called Jikon, which translates to the here and now. Dogen taught that time isn't like a river flowing past us while we just stand on the bank. No, the present moment is existence itself. The past you're regretting and the future you're terrified of, they only actually exist inside your head, right now, in this single exact instant. So the absolute only place you can truly live is exactly where you are. Now for our second major anxiety, that endless comparison trap. We are constantly staring at screens, measuring our own worth against everyone else's highlight reels. To combat this, the 6th century Chinese monk Huineng offers this beautiful concept, Honrai Muchimotsu, which basically means, originally, there is nothing. See, we walk around thinking we're these empty vessels that desperately need to be filled up with status or money or likes just to have value. But Zen argues all that stuff, they're just external decorations we keep taping onto ourselves. Once you stop competing to add more and more decorations, you finally realize your vessel was never actually empty or broken to begin with. You are already totally complete. And then there's our third anxiety, the fear of impermanence, of things ending, and our terrible habit of putting life off until someday. Zen teaches Muju, which is the profound truth that everything changes, everything ends. Period. We usually try to hide from that uncomfortable fact, but Zen says no, look right at it. Why? Because the very fact that this exact moment will literally never happen again is the exact thing that makes it so incredibly precious. When you finally accept impermanence, you stop postponing your life. Someday becomes right now. That brings us to Section 4, the aesthetics of subtraction, visualizing Zen. So this subtractive mindset didn't just stay locked inside people's heads, it spilled out and physically manifested into Japanese culture and art, birthing the famous aesthetic of wabi-sabi. Now, instead of finding beauty in polished perfection or adding a bunch of shiny gold and luxury, wabi-sabi finds profound beauty in things that are simple, austere, and naturally aged. It's really the beauty of the incomplete. Think of, say, a cracked teacup that is cherished exactly because of its history and its flaws, rather than just being thrown in the trash. It's the ultimate physical expression of subtraction. You can really see this ultimate subtraction at work in the 16th century tea rooms designed by Senno Rikyu. Picture this. He created this tiny two-tatami mat space with a literal crawling entrance. High-ranking samurai were forced to leave their swords outside, which, by the way, were their ultimate symbols of ego and status, just to physically fit inside the room. Completely stripped of all that decoration and social hierarchy, the host and the guests could focus purely on Ichigo Ichie, a single, totally unrepeatable, once-in-a-lifetime encounter shared over just a simple bowl of tea. How amazing is that? Moving right along to Section 5, Zen in the Modern World, from temples to Silicon Valley. Let's fast forward to the 20th century. This ancient aesthetic of subtraction crossed the ocean and deeply inspired some of our greatest modern innovations. Thanks to pioneers like D.T. Suzuki, who brought Zen logic to the West, these concepts started spreading like wildfire. I mean, think about Steve Jobs in Silicon Valley. He actually practiced Zen meditation and applied that exact same philosophy of subtraction to Apple's design. He removed buttons, stripped away those thick instruction manuals, and gave us beautifully intuitive tech. Then, around 1979, a scientist named John Kabat-Zinn stripped the religious elements out of Zen meditation to create clinical mindfulness, which became a massively popular, scientifically backed tool for stress. This perfectly illustrates how that same subtractive urge fuels the architectural and lifestyle minimalism we see everywhere today. Our modern brains are literally craving this. And finally, Section 6, Finding Zen Every Day, the ultimate subtraction. Okay, so knowing all this history is great, but how do we actually do this? Especially considering you probably don't have the time to sit facing a wall in a cave all day, right? Well, when you do want to formally sit and meditate, Zen offers a super practical method called Sancho, or the 3 adjustments. First, adjust the body. Sit up with a straight posture to get a nice, stable physical access. Second, adjust your breath. And here is an amazing physiological hack. Make your exhales longer than your inhales. This physically triggers your vagus nerve, signaling to your brain that you're safe, which automatically relaxes your nervous system. And third, adjust the mind. Look, the biggest mistake people make is trying to force their brain to go completely blank. Don't fight your thoughts. It's like fighting the ocean. Instead, just watch them roll in and roll out like waves on a beach. But honestly, here is the real secret. Zen isn't just for when you're sitting perfectly still on a cushion. For the other 23 hours of your day, you can practice Zen through Gyoju-zaga, which basically means finding it in your everyday actions. The golden rule here is incredibly simple. Just do one thing at a time. If you're drinking tea, just drink the tea. No scrolling on your phone at the same time. When you're doing daily chores, which is a practice called samu, put your whole heart into it. Wash the dishes just to feel the warm water in the plates, not as some annoying obstacle standing between you and the couch. When you stop constantly judging and labeling your experiences, you reach the state of Nichi Kore Kojutsu, this beautiful realization that every single day, without labels of good or bad, is fundamentally just a good day. As we wrap up today, I want to leave you with the image of the Inso. It's a simple circle drawn in one single, unhesitating breath. It has no clear beginning, no clear end. And you know what the most important part of the painting is? It's not the ink. It's the massive empty white space inside and all around it. It perfectly represents this idea of emptiness that is simultaneously totally complete. It's just a brilliant reminder to stop adding. Just draw the circle and return to that empty space where you actually already have absolutely everything you need. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to take into your day. We spend so much of our energy desperately trying to add to our lives, right? More tasks, more information, more status. But
If you stopped trying to add today, what beautiful, simple things might finally have the space to appear in your life? Take a deep breath, let go of the excess, and just allow yourself to be here right now. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I'll catch you on the next one.